Hey everyone, it's Drew, and I want to welcome you back to the Learn How to See Better podcast. And today I want to talk a little bit more about the way that we can see the future a little bit better, because sometimes we don't always have the most positive outlook of the future. And that can be for a couple of different reasons, but one of the reasons is that at times we may not be feeling confident about the future, and we may not be feeling confident about ourselves. And so I think it becomes pretty important to take a deeper look at what confidence is, and particularly self-confidence, what real confidence is, as it pertains to how we view ourselves and what the word actually means. You take the word confidence and start to break it apart a little bit, you'll see the root word of confidence is confide. And to confide means to trust. So if I confide in you that you won't tell this secret that I'm going to give you, that means I trust that you're going to keep that between us, right? So you say, okay, well, we're not talking about any secrets here except for the secret nugget that I'm actually sharing with you. And we see that when it comes to self-confidence, it really means to trust yourself. So if the word confidence, root word confide, means to trust, if we're looking at self-confidence, because I think we have to have confidence in ourselves if we are going to be optimistic about the future outlook, then that means we have to trust ourselves. And so I'm sure all of us at one point or another have, whether it was imparted upon us by the world or we had some other experience that maybe rattled our confidence, what we find is that if it's really become a problem, or it has been a problem in your life, it's like you have to take a look at how you get to the root of that problem. And you say, okay, well, if confidence means trust, and if you're lacking self-confidence, it really means you're lacking self-trust, which is an interesting perspective, because most people say, well, I'm confident. That means I feel good about myself. I feel that I'm capable. I feel that I can do, a certain thing. I can perform a certain task. But if you don't feel confident, you don't think you can do it, which means you don't trust that you have the ability to do something. And so when you start to say, all right, well, if you've had an eroded self-confidence, what's really the issue? Well, it would seem logical to think that lack of self-confidence has to do with lack of self-trust. So it would seem to me that there's an instance where that trust has been broken. So a promise has been broken, or you've let yourself down. And when you really start to think about it, if it's that basic, you could even just dumb it down further and say, well, how many times have you let yourself off the hook in life? Okay? Because if you've set a goal or you've made a promise to yourself and you just didn't stick with it, right? Most common one everyone I think can relate to is, you think back to New Year's, right? And everyone makes that New Year's resolution the same every year. I want to make more money, or I want to get in shape. I want to get healthy. I want to lose weight. I want to, do better with certain relationships and treat people better, right? Sounds good. Seems reasonable. But what typically happens in the classic New Year's scenario? Okay, I'm gonna lose weight and get in shape. You go to the gym first month of the year, and the parking lot's packed. You can't find a machine. You can barely get any free weights in. The running machine, it's just crowded. It's a mess. You got to park down the street and around the corner, right? But you come the first week of March, you can park right up front, get any machine you want, and all of a sudden the place is like a ghost town, or it's more like it's always been, which is interesting because you think, well, what happened? Everyone started the year all gung-ho, ready to take over the world, make drastic changes in their lives, right? But somewhere along the line, individuals broke the promise that they had made with themselves, or they didn't do what they said they were going to do continuously. And so what you have is instances where if you start letting yourself off the hook, if you start breaking promises with yourself, if you start to flake out on some of the things that you've committed to, it's going to have an effect on you internally, because we all know our own track record. And if you know you have a habit of breaking your promises, or if you have a habit of starting things and quitting things, you're going to notice that your pattern says you're a quitter, right? I'm going to go forth and conquer something today, and you just don't do it. I'm going to go make a phone call to that old friend or that loved one, and you keep saying you're going to do it. You keep saying you're going to do it, and you don't. You're just breaking promises with yourself. And so think about that with goals and objectives in your life, or other initiatives to do something important. If you continue to break that promise, if you continue to let yourself off the hook in life, you're going to not really trust yourself to follow through, which is going to directly mean that you don't trust yourself, which means you're not going to be as confident in your ability to follow through on what you said you're going to do. And so it's interesting to look at it that way, because I always thought, it was just more about, sort of the machismo element of it, self-confidence, I'm big and strong and tough and that sort of thing. But it's actually a lot deeper than that. And when you look at goal setting and goal getting in life, and the reasons behind the psychology of why people will start things and quit and then continue to doubt themselves, because it can be an ever downward spinning spiral where you get to a point where you try less and less, you set less goals because you don't think you're going to hit them, because last time I tried that, I just I gave it that little bit of effort, and then that was about it, right? And so it's important to recognize that, because you have to recognize that life is full of choices and decisions, and they're really not the same. You could choose to go somewhere and not actually do it, but once you make that decision, it's kind of like you're actually going to do it. You set it in your mind, and you're more prone to take action on that thing. And so I think it's important for people to recognize that they can actually re-engineer their own self-confidence if they understand better what's behind the idea of being able to make a promise with yourself, to make a covenant with yourself, that you're going to do the thing that you said you're going to do, the project that you're going to start, the mission that you want to go after, the relationship that you want to build, the journey that you're going to embark on. And so a decision is similar in this case, because a decision is a lot like a covenant that you make with yourself, okay? And so let's take that word covenant even and break it down a little bit further. If the word confide means to trust, the word covenant means to cut. To decide is essentially like making a covenant with yourself. And that cut is going to be to cut off the old way of living so that you can begin to live in a new and different way. So to make a decision is a little bit different than a choice. And so it's important to understand that this is kind of how it works. Decisions are like covenants that you make with yourself, and once you make that promise, that bond, it's a little bit deeper than just some surface talk, right? Because typically a covenant, it generally has like a biblical reference, right? And what you'll find is, if you were to explore the usage of the word covenant, you'll find that it's based on love and trust. But it's an agreement, right? It's an agreement with yourself, but you could also have a covenant with someone else. And it's based on love and trust, that agreement, which is a little bit different than when you don't have that love and you don't have that trust with someone. And that's where you usually see a similar word to covenant used, and that's a contract, right? People make a contract with someone. If you don't do what you said you're going to do, I'm going to come get you. And if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, you're going to come get me, right? Or take some sort of, whether it's a legal action or there's some sort of penalty. So we start to look at all these C words. There's confidence, there's cuts, there's covenants, there's contracts. There's all these things that are relevant here, because I think that when you talk about promises and agreements and trust, contracts and covenants are kind of like opposites, right? A contract, you're not really trusting that person. You're saying, if this doesn't happen the way we agree to, this is the penalty, which isn't really, it's not living in the right harmonious space, because a covenant is different in that you're making a promise, and it's based on love and trust. So again, the word covenant means to cut. So you're going to cut off something out of your life and make that promise so that you don't do something again. And I think it's key to think about this. If you're going to make a decision to do something, that's like a promise, a covenant with yourself. And so what I think is going to be essential for people to do if they're struggling with self-confidence is understand some of these principles and realize that self-confidence is a serious thing. And if you want to have it, you have to take this concept more seriously and recognize that it begins with beginning to follow through on the things that you say you are going to do. You have to do the things that you say you promise of yourself. If you're going to go and start that new exercise routine, get after it. Take those baby steps. Let it be imperfect. That's okay. Just have that effort that you put into making those changes. Because if you start to look at the fact that your self-confidence is going to depend on the quality of your performance, which is the quality of the covenant that you make with yourself, and that decision that you make to do something, you're going to be in a better position to see the actual results of better performance, because you're actually doing the thing that you said you would do. And once you see that positive track record over and over and over again, okay, I'm going to get up first thing in the morning and exercise or read a book or meditate or what have you. If you actually continue to do those things in a repeated fashion, you're going to see yourself become more confident about whether or not you're going to do that same thing the next week after you've done it 5 days in a row, and the week after that after you've done it 2 weeks in a row, and the week after that, and the next month after you've done it for week after week after week. And so self-confidence is something that must be built the same way that trust must be built. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever had a situation where someone has wronged you and you don't trust them anymore? Or let's look at it from the opposite perspective. Have you ever intentionally or unintentionally hurt someone or broken their trust? What'd that feel like? What was it like on that road to recovery? Trust has to be rebuilt. And it can be destroyed in a second. And it takes a long time to rebuild. So the same way trust can be damaged with another individual, it can be damaged with yourself. So if you're letting yourself down, breaking promises, doing things that don't line up with your best intentions, you're not going to trust yourself. What a thought. If you don't even trust yourself, how are you going to be confident that you'll do the things that you say you're going to do and to embark on the journeys that you say you're going to embark on? And there can be lasting effects of that if you begin to develop habits of just kind of letting yourself off the hook and not going out there and giving it your best in life. And so if we can just learn to see it better from that perspective and see that trust is critical, and trust is something we have to have with ourself, like an agreement with ourself, then you will be better off and you'll be in a better position to begin to rebuild the trust that you have with yourself. And that repeatedly is going to help build your confidence in yourself, because now you can look back as you learn how to see better, and you'll see that you have a better track record of performing because you're honoring the promises you make to yourself. And over time, as you look ahead, you begin to become more optimistic because you're building trust. You're making small daily deposits into that trust account with yourself that give you the belief that you're going to perform well once again. And that's how you slowly reestablish or establish for the first time real confidence, self-confidence. And that can be a very powerful vehicle in your journey of life. And it has to do with the way you view yourself. It has to do with the way others view you, the way that others treat you. And it's just a matter of performance. because we can set the stage for good performance and set the stage for becoming more self-confident if we will simply honor the words and the promises that we make. So I'm hoping that everyone is picking up what I'm putting down here, because I think that many people struggle with self-confidence. They just don't believe in themselves. But more often than not, it has to do with their track record. And we have to understand that track record can be changed. It might be a damaged road, but it's not a broken road, okay? And that road, that it could be repaved, okay? So once we recognize that, we're going to be in a better position to start making decisions that serve us and begin to make deposits back into that trust account. So just like a damaged relationship, you can pull it off. It takes a little time. It can be crushed in a second. It takes a long time to rebuild. But if you're on your journey where your confidence has been crushed from a lack of follow through or something else, then it's important to understand that we got to get to work on replenishing that so we can get back into a positive scenario where we can have a positive outlook about our futures. So I'm hoping you found that helpful today with regards to self-confidence. I think we can all do a little bit more to be confident. So be sure to think about this next time you make a decision or a promise or a covenant with yourself. It's all related and based on trust. And once you build up that trust, you're going to build up your self-confidence. Once you build up self-confidence, you're going to be that much better equipped to go out and pursue the goals that you have set for yourself in life. And you're going to feel that much more positive about your ability to accomplish them. So for this episode, I want you to think about that and make a decision to be more trustworthy with the way that you deal with yourself. And once you're able to master that, what you'll find is that your self-confidence will begin to grow by leaps and bounds, and it will spill over into other areas of your life where you can begin to have that continued momentum and growth. So with that, I want to go ahead and leave you guys with those thoughts. As always, please feel free to share this information or tag someone you think that it might help. If you know someone with confidence issues, have them take a listen at this and see if it might help. Give them a new perspective. See if this could help them to possibly learn how to see better from looking at things from a different way. And in that fashion, we can position ourselves to not only grow and develop our own self-confidence, but actually teach others how to do the same. A lot of this stuff is simple. It's just different ways of looking at it once you're exposed to new information. So with that, again, I want to thank everyone for listening, and I'll be sure to catch you on a future episode. And share any comments that you have or ideas that you would like to see for future content on this podcast. Until next time, thanks and have a great day.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.